Reform, as you and I were talking about earlier, Alexander, gets an F in one unusual area. With all the things that it talked about, cell phones and other things, it failed to address, guess what, the way that we're communicating right this minute, which is the English language. And we welcome Bob, okay? We welcome Bob Vandervoort to talk with us about it. Bob, welcome to us. You are with ProEnglish. Tell us who you're with.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the director of ProEnglish. We're a nonprofit that works in all 50 states to make English our official language for government.
And so it sounds simple.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't it simple? Were you looking forward with great anticipation then to this immigration bill, thinking, this is going to make your life easier, everybody's going to speak English?
Well, you know, we've seen these before with amnesties in the past. The issue of English is just not addressed. So we're bringing in millions of people who don't speak English, and there's no requirement in this new amnesty bill that these people have to learn English.
Well, who funds that? When you go into every communities, I know that some churches do it as a outreach and so forth to teaching people English as a second language, but often it's a burden of government, is it not, with the school system and so forth?
It is, yeah, and some churches do pick up the slack, and there's also community colleges,
but all those things are paid for with our tax dollars, is that correct?
A lot of it is, that's correct, yeah. And I think what our concern with this bill is that you're going to have so many people without any English language requirement who can come into the system and demand translation for all sorts of government services. It's going to create a big burden on the taxpayer, and it also sends the wrong message about assimilation and bringing our country together over a common language.
Well, there you go. I mean, I know absolutely no German. I would be horrified if you dropped me in the middle of Berlin and I got amnesia and didn't know how to get home. I wouldn't even know how to communicate. I can't imagine that I would go there knowing that I couldn't communicate in that language. It's very interesting. We're going to bring you our subway interviews soon. I'm talking to people that were here in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, the Washington, D.C. metro, yes, in the subway system. And as we were talking, we kept getting interrupted by the English as a second language broadcast in Spanish, and they couldn't understand what we were saying, and we couldn't understand what they were saying. Wasn't that interesting?
Right, and it encourages people not to learn English if we're going to broadcast messages in their own language. And it's, this country has always had a melting pot ideal of assimilation. You come here, yes, we all have different backgrounds, different languages, but when we have 300 different languages that are spoken as we do today, how do you agree on what should get translated and what shouldn't? Isn't it unfair to translate some languages but not others? So the easiest way to resolve that is just to make English the same.
Well, but I think that's not only a goal. I would think that's something that most people feel is a given here in America. Do you not?
Oh yeah, most Americans support our position. In fact, most Americans aren't even aware that English is not already our official language. And the polling is, I've seen polls upwards of 84% want English to be the official language. If your listeners check out our website at proenglish.org, we have a lot of information about how broadly this issue is supported. It cuts across economic lines, political lines, racial lines, education lines. You'll find no other issue where you get so much support.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's just like if you own a car, I think you should have a driver's license.
Right.
Duh. Yeah. I mean, most people would think that was something that is a given, but yet the other thing we were talking about earlier, that a lot of the people that feel as though that this amnesty/immigration reform bill, depending on how you look at it, that the people who were so for it are people whose hearts are bleeding over these poor children. Well, these poor children that are the children of undocumented workers, I call them illegal immigrants. Sorry that I'm so anti-PC, but that's exactly what they are. It is a burden upon their own children too, and it's a burden upon the classroom. I lived in Texas and raised two of my children there through the 4th grade, and it is a burden upon that education system when these kids do not speak English.
Well, it is, and the situation is worse when you have schools that are encouraging bilingual education as opposed to English language immersion. All the studies have shown that English language immersion is the best way to get kids.
Immersion, so it's
well, that would be where about at least 4 hours a day they're being instructed completely in English.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened in the past is when you have bilingual education programs, which started out with good intentions, but the results were bad, that part of the class is supposed to be taught in English. Say if they have a math class, half of the class should be taught in English and the other half for them, right?
Well, especially math. I mean, that would have to be a real bummer to understand algebra in another language. I could hardly understand it in English, and that's my first language.
Right, but what happened as a result was that these students, a lot of times the teachers were not spending half the time on English, and it ended up that most of their instruction was coming across in Spanish, and they weren't learning English, and they were falling behind the other classmates because they were not learning English. And when schools went to English immersion programs, the kids learned English so quickly that they were quickly moved out of those immersion programs and moved into the regular classrooms.
And that's true for any language, whether you came here speaking Chinese, whether you're a legal or an illegal immigrant, whichever you are, these types of programs and having English established as a language that everybody speaks is only good for children everywhere in our country. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, and we have studies that we cite on our website, again, ProEnglish.org. If your listeners check that out, it shows that people who learn English, if they're an immigrant, they obviously earn higher wages, their kids do better in school. There's just so many benefits to having it as our common language.
That's right. In bilingual, you can be bilingual, trilingual, as many languages as you'd like to learn. God bless us all through the Rosetta Stone. English should still be the first language, and I am quite frankly, with 844 pages, I am shocked and horrified that they couldn't come up with at least a half a page about speaking English in these 844 pages. Are you?
Well, that's just it. I mean, in order to become a naturalized American citizzen, you actually have to pass a civics exam and show a certain level of English language proficiency. So why they could not make a similar requirement for all these people they want to pass an amnesty for, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me either. Well, you are listening here to the Cindy Gray Show. We thank so much Bob Vandervoort for being with us. He is from ProEnglish.com. .org. And you can look him up, oh, here it is, on his website, ProEnglish.org, if you'd like to get involved in that. And we are going to bring you more updates from Capitol Hill here when we are reporting with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Many of our co-hosts, I guess, are running around getting ready to go to a Pete Sessions press conference. It's going to be starting at 2.